Hey, I'm Nathaniel Fossen. I'm a professional archaeologist and I'm currently on assignment temporarily in Alaska, but I do most of my work in the eastern woodlands region of the United States. I've been excavating and studying, and in some cases teaching in this area for over 10 years, mostly dealing with the indigenous cultures of North America prior to colonization by Europeans. So today I decided to address the civilization problem. The idea that groups of people constituting civilizations, that idea gets thrown around a lot without there being any real consistency or consensus on what a civilization is. Some of my regular viewers may have noticed that I don't really ever use the word civilization to describe groups of people from the American past. And there's a few reasons for that. So, first, by definition, a civilization is a culture that has urban centers and established political states in the legal sense. So, cities that have governments. For most of the human past throughout the world, cities didn't exist. So, calling something like the Clovis culture or the Yamnaya a civilization would not be accurate. That leads me to the second problem. Once you start using the word civilization to describe certain cultures, you become required to consider other cultures to be uncivilized or not civilized. And the problem there is that uncivilized has never really meant they don't live in cities, they don't have governments, without an additional implication about these people's character or quality. There's always been a value judgment pointed towards people who are classified as not civilized or uncivilized as backwards, degenerate, or regressive, which really is not accurate. Hunter gatherer cultures tend to be healthier, more egalitarian, have more free time, and they're exempt from the kinds of political subjugation that is inherent to most urbanized societies. So, in a lot of ways, the majority of people's lives get worse when they start congregating in urban centers while a minority of elites reap all of the major benefits. So, for all of those reasons, archaeologists don't really think about things in terms of civilization, civilized, uncivilized. We don't really mess with that anymore. We've found that it causes more problems than it solves, and it's really not a useful tool for understanding the way people lived in the past. So instead, we're much more concerned with archaeological cultures. And this is confusing also because an archaeological culture is subtly but importantly distinct from an ethnographic culture. So when we're talking about a culture in archaeology, we're really discussing a set of material patterns that we see on the ground. So for instance, the Middle Woodland period Kapina culture is a mortuary style that we see in the Middle Tennessee River Valley area that was defined by mound burials with certain grave goods like copper reel-shaped gorgets and carved galena artifacts. It's part of a broader Hopewell interaction sphere culture that takes up a good bit of the eastern woodlands region. There's no real reason to think that all of the people who practice this Kapina mortuary style also spoke the same language or the same dialect, prepared their food the same way, or even consider themselves to be the same people or the same group in any kind of unified, coherent way. They just all kind of use a particular style of burial for particular individuals. So when we're talking about cultures changing or one culture replacing another, it doesn't really mean at all that a group of people migrated in and replaced the people who used to live there or anything like that. It means that in a particular area at a particular time, the people have started practicing a different material culture than they had before, which might be for a lot of reasons. So, changes in ecological environment, like increases in rainfall or decreases in rainfall, changes in the species distribution of certain plants in the region, changes in the social environment, so expanding or collapsing trade networks, or influx of warfare in the area, migrations in or out, and local innovations in terms of like technological development. These can all be involved in archaeological cultures changing. So an archaeological culture really doesn't have much to do with anything like bloodline or ancestry or heritage, really, in the way that people today want to talk about ancestry or lineage or affiliation. Now, at a more narrow kind of specific range of resolution, You might also hear about archaeological phases, which are a lot more specific. They're clusters of material that go together in a tighter package. So, for example, the Bell Hill phase in northern Alabama is defined by sites with limestone tempered pottery that they use less. They don't decorate it more than 10% of the time. Usually, it's a unrefined plainware pod, so no like stamping or engraving or anything like that to the exterior. Typically, they most frequently have a type of projectile point called a spike cluster, so things like Swan Lakes. They use a knife style called a Benjamin, which is really difficult to identify without certain kinds of U-square analysis, microscopic analysis. They also have a settlement pattern that's kind of unusual for when and where they are. They tend to place their settlements on smaller creeks instead of major rivers, and they were making these pit features like storage pits that were fired to a very high temperature to the point that the interface between the hole and the soil surrounding it was baked into kind of an unrefined earthenware, almost like a pottery. So it's hydrophobic, and burrowing animals can't get into that storage space, whether they're keeping food in there or what have you. It also keeps water out. They also use a very diverse set of animals for food, including snails. This is similar to but distinct from the contemporary Owl Hollow phase just to the north of them, that's kind of between the Elk and the Duck River. On these sites, we also find the same limestone tempered pottery, similar stone projectile points, but these people are living in villages with very open central plazas, and they're using double earth ovens for cooking, and we don't see that on Bell Hill sites. So they're geographically distinct from each other, and they also kind of are behaving slightly different. They're building their homes in different ways to what we see in Bell Hill phase sites. So phases, long and short of that, is that a phase archaeologically is a distinct localized expression of a broader cultural affiliation. So I hope that made sense and cleared some things up. If you've got any questions, please leave those in the comments. And as always, thank you for watching.